Hey everyone, this is Jack Bourne, founder of Deadline Funnel, and I'm back with my friends André and Shawn. And what we're going to talk about here is world building. So I think this time I'd love for André to kick things off and talk about what world building is like. You know, when we closed out the course session, you talked about how the content on your site, or at least some of the content, is ungated, and it really leads you step by step into your world. So how would you describe world building?
Right. So our concept of a world is this place that when they get to our website, for example, so world building is on the website, but it can start external to the website. I don't want to get too complicated too quickly, but so all the content that we put on the site, it's there to pull a certain type of person forward towards us by demonstrating value. So that's one of the first ideas, one of the core ideas is this idea of emphasizing relationships. So we do that through demonstrating value, and we do that through the content that we share. Now there's different ways of sharing content. Some is a bit more complex than others, but the basic concept is this world that people find themselves at pulls them towards us based on what they see. And at the same time, it also repels certain people that, you know, if they're clearly in the wrong place, they're going to leave. And that's all by design. So I think that's the 30,000 foot view. I don't know if Shawn wants to give a 10,000 foot view version of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about world building that we deliberately create worlds that our audience, our ideal audience wants to inhabit. So if you think about like a movie like Star Wars, you know, the world building in Star Wars is pretty profound. You know, immediately, if you sit down and watch the original Star Wars, immediately you start to learn things about, okay, there are these Star Destroyers, and there's a princess, and there's a Rebel Alliance, and there are these things called Jedis, and they use these, you know, lightsabers, and like whoa, there's a lot to process. But what you get is a sense of, if you're interested in sci-fi, you're drawn into it. It's interesting, and you understand how the world works, and you understand the dynamics of that world. So for us, you know, we don't have Jedis or princesses, for that matter, or Star Destroyers. But when people enter into worlds that we create, we still give very similar signals. So for us, the signals we give are subtle. Some of them are like, we don't have gated content. You don't need to opt in to read hundreds of thousands of words of things we've created. We have free courses that are infinitely better than some paid courses, and they're ungated as well. So we're giving a signal, and underneath that signal is this message that we treat everyone in our world like a customer, regardless if money has changed hands. That's how we've codified that. That is a rule. Just like, you know, Jedis exist as a rule in Star Wars. In our world, treating everyone like a customer before money changes hands is a subtle rule that our audience picks up on. Some people that doesn't matter to them, and it's not a factor. But for some people, this combination of factors in this world that we've created is so attractive that they're drawn to it magnetically, and we continue to pull them forward because of that attraction, because they feel like they're in a place that feels comfortable. You know, if you love crime drama and you read a really good crime drama book, you feel like you're at home, you're in the right place. That's world building. If you love sci-fi and you read a crime drama, you might not be nearly as engaged, right? It's not because one's better or one's worse. It's just that the world that you're inhabiting isn't the world that you're most interested in. And we use these, we're both writers. We use principles of narrative and of story and of serialized narrative to craft worlds where the right audience is drawn forward, pulled. We don't push people. Like the linear funnel methodology, sort of pushing people forward step by step with persuasion. It's a lot harder, from our experience, that's harder to do than to pull people forward where they feel drawn to what's next. They want to know what's next. And those two things sound like they're similar, but they are so fundamentally different.
One of the things we've recognized is that customers are created before money changes hands. So that's an idea that we've observed when people come into our world and they interact with our content, with our emails that we send out. And at this point, somebody is not a customer, for example. And along the way, there's a moment that is different for every person because they need to interact with the content in different ways, in non-linear ways, which is why lots of our content isn't linear. So while we can have linear paths within our world, it's still open enough that allows people to click around, read things, go down little rabbit holes, pop out at the end, and then go down the next rabbit hole. And at some point, there's a moment that happens that person decides, I'm going to be a customer of these guys. And that can be early on, that can be later on. Sometimes it takes, we've had customers that we've watched and they become a customer after a few years of interacting. Some people, it's the same day. So it's different for everybody, but they interact with the content in a way that's meaningful to them. And then there's this moment that happens. And so that's one of the things that I think is unique with this idea of world building. So you're going to say something else, Jack? I didn't mean to.
Well, I want to get into how someone who wants to start building their own world for their own ideal client, it's probably not going to be or shouldn't be exactly necessarily the same world that you guys built. So what sort of steps would you recommend for someone who wants to create that? Because I can think of some of the things that I've observed about the content that you guys are putting out, but I would love to hear from you guys, like what advice you would give. Let's use the talking over coffee setting that Shawn, you brought up earlier. Someone says, I want to start this world building thing. How would you tell them to go about doing it?
I think there's something people need to understand first, and this may be one of the most important marketing lessons ever. I heard it first from Dean Jackson. We were at the 2019 Copy Chief Live, and we were at the speakers dinner, and I had really a privilege to sit next to Dean. And Dean was really excited about some research that he had been doing, and I know he's spoken about this in other venues, and he's spoken about it publicly, so I'm comfortable sharing it here, which is when he analyzed a really broad set of data, of client data, what he saw is of the people who purchased over a 2-year period of time, 15% of those people, so 15% of buyers who bought in a 2-year window, only 15% bought in the first 90 days. The remaining 85%, this was across all kinds of different businesses, that the remaining buyers purchased after 90 days. Now, the implications of this simple observation, we've seen it repeat. I've seen it with clients for decades. We've seen it in our business. We've seen it with just everybody. When people learn this, everybody comes back and is like, I can't believe it. I looked at all my data for however many years, and that's exactly what happens. Like, this is as real as gravity. And nobody talks about this, because what ends up happening is everyone, so many people are optimizing for the 15% who will buy right now. And there is 4 times more opportunity for people who will buy later, only if you don't screw it up. So that's the starting point for everything with world building, because what you have to recognize when you start building a world, let's assume for the sake of argument that we have some expertise between the 3 of us, and we've put it together in some kind of, we'll do like a 7-day email, a free email training series. And then on day 7, we're going to make an offer over 3 days for a $99, like best of Shawn and Jack and André, their greatest hits, over another 7 days. And we've got some money to buy some Facebook traffic, and we do it. We buy we have a Facebook ad, and we've convinced ourselves we need an ad that gets attention. So we do the things to get attention, but then we send people through. We get leads. We need them to opt in. We have a landing page, makes promises to the world, and then we have 7 emails. It's a 7 email, like we're given. We're really sharing with ourselves of our knowledge, and then 3 emails really sell the next 7 days worth of emails. We've just built a world, right? It's a small world, and most of it is not available out. It's not visible. There's sort of a gated garden, right? Now let's change one dynamic. let's send the traffic to a landing page that does the same thing the 7 emails do, ungated. We don't ask anybody to give their email address. We just say, you know what? We think this is so great that we're just going to, you don't have to do anything. We just want you day by day. We're just day by day. We'll go through this content, or you can go through it page by page, however you do it, because you're not giving your email address. And at the end, if you like that, then you can sign up, and we have a course that we talk a little bit about this thing we've done a little while between us, internet marketing, and we'll do another 7 days, but much more in depth, right? That's a different world. The exact same content, but we've changed the nature of the world now because we've made half of it available to visible without requiring an opt-in. And then at some point, let's just assume, because we know André loves to be on camera so much, that André is in the background raising his hand and saying, guys, we really need to do more stuff with YouTube. So André goes off and he creates sort of 2 or 3 different entry points in order for organic YouTube that send people now to this 7 days of free ungated content. Well, we've just expanded our world a little bit. We've adopted a new medium. It's visual instead of written. And so you can see how it begins to spiral out just from this one idea. And businesses, we have a good friend, the 3 of us, who literally built $1 million business. And I think it was 5 months. I mean, such a ridiculous amount of time. He built a business generating over $1 million in revenue, and then quickly went to like 2.5 million. And it was ridiculous, but he built it essentially on a 1,600 word landing page. Like he just sent Google Display Network traffic to a 1,600 word landing page to an offer, and overwhelmingly people didn't buy the low cost offer. And then he took them on this long journey and periodically makes the offer again. Like that's world building. It's not more complicated than that, as long as the world is cohesive. And that's the critical thing. Like you can't have Star Trek and Star Wars, right? There aren't phasers or whatever. You don't have the teleporter from Star Trek in Star Wars. So you can't have and the way this shows up that gets weird, especially if you work with an agency or subcontractors, is you'll have a certain vibe in your emails, but then a really different vibe in your ads. And the ads might be like all curiosity and all like clickbaity, but then your landing page is very different, and then your emails are very different, and it doesn't feel cohesive, and people sense that. So one of the things that we teach is that we build our entire world along narrative arcs, and we use tools like framing and other things so that we know the ad is setting up the offer that may be 10 days later, 30 days later, 2 years later. We know that. So our ads belong in the same world that our landing pages belong to, that same world. They feel like they're the same. They feel like they're part of the same larger story. And that's the essence of world building, that it feels like you're in that same story everywhere that you are. And everything that it expands outward over time are just new chapters, new characters, new parts of that larger story. I get excited talking about this stuff.
Yeah. So bring this back to the conversation that we had in the core training, where we're talking about systems theory. I love the picture that one of you painted. I think it was André painted of, you can't take the tractor wheels and put it on the F1 car and think, okay, well now it's gonna be better. So I think what you're describing here, as I hear it, is the systems theory shows up in this world building, because it's not like you have an opt-in that has one type of voice and sort of narrative arc, but a totally different type of voice in the ads that gets people, yes, they opted in, but now all of a sudden they've switched worlds. They went from, I'm switching my analogies here, but they went from the Star Trek world to the Star Wars world, and they're confused, like what's going on here. You guys are looking at the entire journey from when you guys first get in front of a client to when they purchase, and also beyond, as an entire system. And what does that world look like? And what sort of ads fit in that world? Even if there's another type of ad that, it could get a lot of attention, it could get a lot of clicks, it doesn't fit in the overall narrative arc of the world that you're building. Is that right?
I just wanted to say what our version of world building isn't, because a large component of world building is ungated. It's essentially that external world on the website. So, expression of world building is not a single landing page that all ads and all JV traffic ends up going to a single landing page with an opt-in or a buy button. That's not called, and then everything else is either behind an opt-in form or behind a buy button. That's not our definition of world building. The outside external world, even though it's on the website, is there's a lot of stuff there that moves the type of people that we want to do business with towards us, like I said earlier on. So we know who we want to do business with, and we know who we don't want to do business with. And we want the right people to move in our direction before they even opt into our email list. We don't want to be doing this filtering dance once they're on the email list, if they're the wrong person. So part of the idea of world building is to filter out those wrong people. So, we have a pretty clear idea of the type of people that we want to attract. We talk about this concept of world building and versions of this on the website. And so if the wrong person lands up there, somebody in the make money biz ops space, they're going to feel like they're in the wrong place when they land on our website. And they're not even going to try and find our opt-in form if they can't even find it and then opt in. That's not going to happen. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that because I think it's important.
There's a funny thing here. We've deluded ourselves with thinking that the technology is better than it is. Like we use very sophisticated tracking tools, and because we're digital marketers, we think we kind of understand how the world works, and we don't at all. And the way that I think I can prove this to anybody listening is just either go think about the previous 10 semi-significant purchases you made. I don't care about a cup of coffee or whatever, but reasonably significant purchases you've made over the last whatever period of time, and actually just sketch out as much as you can about the journey that you went on to become a customer. And what you're going to find is it's not linear at all. I mean, very rarely does someone, they're walking through life and they stumble on the perfect offer at the perfect time, at the perfectly designed entry point, and they just go start to finish through a funnel, and their customers, and they're happy. Like, sure, some small percentage of people do that. Not a lot, 5-10% in any market. But what generally happens is we hear about something. I'll give an example of myself. A couple of years ago, I bought a Traeger wood pellet grill. Now, if Traeger looks at their data, well, actually, I bought it from a retailer. So Traeger's not going to have any idea how I purchased it. But if Traeger could see my entire customer journey, what they would see is that, first of all, I'd never heard of a Traeger grill. And then I saw in an email someone, and I don't remember which one. It was not about grills, to be clear, because I was not actively looking for grills. But someone said, I just bought this grill. It's absolutely amazing. I just skimmed it because I'm not really a grill guy. I wasn't. A week or two later, I see a second reference to Traeger. It's a different email. It's a totally different reference. That's weird. Like, what is this? Randomly, I see now it's my reticular activating system is on. But it was over the course of months and months that all these weird touch points in totally different media that was not deliberate. I wasn't looking for it, but led me down to the point of spending $1,500 on a grill, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. But for Traeger to say, like, well, okay, we need to, optimize, like, how do you do that? And our insight, when we combine sort of Dean's observation and our own wacky behavior and what we see with other things, I think that the core of our insight is that to try to understand systems theory is complex. But if you understand world building, you get all the benefits of systems theory. Like, that just comes with it. So you don't really have to understand it. If you take this idea that I'm going to build worlds that are attractive to the people who I want to have as my customers, and I'm going to trust that by making it increasingly attractive, more and more of them are going to find me, and they're going to buy when they're ready, versus me trying to turn myself into knots to get them to buy when I'm ready. If I could just trust that I'm going to put the right things in the right places and really put what's attractive to my ideal audience and build a world that my ideal audience wants to be a part of. If I do that, they're going to show up. I mean, yes, there has to be an awareness component. Yes, you have to be out there, know it exists, but that's the core of it. And the hardest thing to do as a marketer is to trust that that's enough. Because what we want to do is we want to goose all the numbers. Like, well, okay, I built a place that I think is pretty attractive, but let me do some weird co-reg thing and see if I can get 10,000 random people to come in, and hopefully some of them are my customer. Like, don't do that kind of stuff. But world building gives us all the benefit. It does two things exceptionally well. It gives you all of the power of systems theory without having to learn anything about systems theory. And it recognizes it's based on what's actually real in the world, not some fanciful interpretation of how direct response marketers wish the world works, right? Like that most people are not going to buy from you right now, but they will buy if you don't screw it up. So build a world they want to inhabit and let them buy when they're ready. Like it really is that simple, I think.
So one of the things that I just want to touch on before we go is that I think you guys mentioned that it doesn't necessarily have to be on your website. So I just want to I'll put out the idea and then you guys confirm or tell me that I'm wrong. But this could be in depending on who you are as a marketer and the types of content that you want to create. Like for André and Shawn, you guys want to do written form content primarily. And then link out to other resources that you've curated that you think are cool, that are a good fit to your world. And that's one of the hallmarks of the type of content that you guys put together, is kind of curating these gems of YouTube videos or Facebook posts or other articles that really fit into the point that you're making in your content. But for other people, it might be Instagram or Facebook Lives or YouTube, and putting out content that is not gated, but it really starts to build that external world, external to that opt-in and the autoresponder sequence, that is the world that their ideal client would want to inhabit. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to build like everything, right? It's what you're trying to do is your world building often is world assembling, right? That you want to understand what it is about the world that you're creating that's attractive, but the components, a lot of the content of that world, it most likely, especially early, will be either other sources where you're directing people's attention to things, which has a magical effect. If you draw people's attention to other great resources, you become a great resource, which is a sort of interesting emergent property of curation. But you could also, it's not about like having a 15,000 word website. You could have a Facebook page that has great content, and that's the center of your universe. That you don't own the platform, but that might be a way to get started. Maybe Instagram is your thing, right? Like maybe depending on what the business is, there are lots of ways to have that center nexus of content, and then just have other places where your world exists that are relevant. Where does your audience go to find out things that are interesting to them about the value that you create? That's where you start building your world.
I was just going to add one component to what Shawn was saying, and that social media, the nature of social media can be quite snack worthy. It's difficult to really form a long-term relationship inside of a social media thing. It's normally awareness, so you could have a multi-page pre-sale or whatever, the part of your world on your website that says something specific. So it moves someone on this little journey, and then you can operate on the social medias and on Twitter and start conversations and be on people's podcasts that frame a certain discussion that naturally points to this thing that you've created. So everything leads towards the website if you choose to build a website and not build your business on another platform, which many people do. But the point is, it's like an octopus. You have all these tentacles pointing in, and those tentacles can be social media posts, guest posts. That could be anything and anything. It can be video, it could be text, and whatever. and they all lead to the head of the octopus, which could be where the center of your world is, and that's where everything kind of expands from, if you want to. That's just part of the metaphor, I suppose.
Yeah, and for anyone who's, so I hope I'm not saying this wrong, but for anyone who's confused, like how is the king of autoresponder madness, the founder of that, talking about this world building and ungated content, like what happened to getting people on the list, and where does deadline funnel fit into this? Like, I'll at least, whether you agree with what I say, about deadline funnel or not, the getting someone on an email list is sort of that. It may not be the last mile, but it's one of the last miles. So we're talking about, like, how can you take stuff that is some of your world building content and put it, well, by definition, world building content is outside of that opt-in, but there is a part where either you're leading them to make a purchase, like as the first major step forward, or joining your email list to dive even deeper into that world. So what we've been talking about is the stuff that lives outside of that. And then, just for anyone who's like, okay, so how does deadline funnel fit in this? You have this world that people can inhabit, and they might inhabit it for 30 days, 90 days, a year, 2 years, but then they finally decide, for whatever reason, that thing that I bumped into today in this world is now I'm going to opt in. And that could lead to a very definitive, deadline of, now that you're in this, the final mile, you're in a step closer into this world, can end with a deadline. That's one way that it could be done. So is there anything that I said there, Andre, that you would disagree with?
Email is definitely part of world building. It's a key part of world building. The distinction that I think I was trying to make earlier on, well, both of us, is that world building is on the website. It's stuff that you have there. It's creating opportunities for people to find serialized narrative and then move towards an opt-in form, because that's one way to make better prospects. But the goal is always to get somebody on an email list. And that's where we really amp up that relationship, and we can have a much closer relationship with an audience. The goal is not for somebody just to stay on the website and never move to email. They should move to email relatively quickly if they wanted to. But the point is, they get to choose. They get to interact with some of the content, and then they make a choice and they come through the email, and that's when all the good stuff happens. And the email, stuff can happen in email, that points back to the website. And there's this whole nonlinear, this engagement that happens between us and an audience. And it's in both places. It's not in one place.
Guys, because I'm always so fascinated with what you guys are up to and the things you guys have learned, you guys have generously given me way more time than we had originally planned. So I'm going to let you guys go, but I wanted to say a huge thank you. I know that this has been mind expanding, and if it's at all confusing for anyone and you're still wondering, like, okay, this sounds exciting, but I need to go we went from the 30,000 foot view to the 10,000 to maybe the 1,000, but I need the nitty gritty details. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I would highly recommend that you follow the links that we have near this video that take you to André and Shawn's world, and you can crawl around in their world and see what it's all about. And I would highly recommend that you opt in to what they have. These two guys are my friends. They're awesome people, and the content that they put out is incredible. Their world isn't right for everyone, but if it resonates with you, they get my stamp of approval. They have things like Sphere of Influence, which I know, gets into the nitty gritty details of how to build these worlds. And you guys have other things as well. And of course, André is the king of email, and Shawn, one of the kings of traffic. So really, really appreciate you guys spending this time with us. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack.
It's been fun. Thanks for having us.
See ya.